Hello, welcome again. I'm here with Kathleen King. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hello, so good to be here.
Yay. So you are another mama of a couple of amazing young star children. And so we're going to get into talking about your experience and your amazing kids. You have, I'm going to ask you to tell us about that. But first, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you and your work in the world. You also are an amazing creator. So I'd love to hear that. And then you can just move right into telling us about your kids, how old they are, and getting us started here.
Great, thank you. Yes, so I'm a physical therapist and I'm a neuroscience educator. I work with people who are dealing with chronic trauma, chronic illness, maybe even awakening, and their nervous system might be going haywire because of one or all of those things. And so I help people to learn how to basically be in these bodies and be able to hold the tensions of the internal world with their alignment and their sense of who they really are, and to be able to hold both, you know, having a body that might be not feeling so well, whether it's from illness, trauma, or ascension process stuff, and also being out there living their purpose. And I use neuroscience, I use polyvagal theory, I use somatics, I use energy medicine practices to help people navigate those complexities. And I learned how to do that because I spent many years very sick with chronic Lyme disease, mold toxicity, viral infections, parasite infections, severe trauma, hormone, anxiety, you know, all that kind of stuff, while having two young children who are also on the sensory spectrum. And so it was baptism by fire of understanding nervous system regulation, both mine and my children's. And at the time I thought, what in the heck is going on? Like, I was a quote normal person living a normal life in that old world that many of us know about. And it felt like I gave birth, my brain broke, my body broke. I had a highly sensitive child and I didn't know up from down, left from right. And it took me many years to handle it and then to develop a pathway through it. And now I help many other people doing the same. I'm not a specialist on children, but that is part of my perfect storm that kind of put me on this journey. And so now I do that. And I have two children now, and they were both highly sensitive, definitely children from the stars that came to help with my awakening process. And I have a 9-year-old boy and an 11-year-old daughter.
Wow. That journey is so rich. I know. Having been a friend and colleague of yours just in the last few years. So thank you for doing that, like moving through that, navigating that in your own body, in your own family, so that you can now hold that space for so many others. Super powerful. And you really speak to a lot of things I'd love to jump into. So talking about, you know, because in that old world, so much we were conditioned to not pay attention to this body. And that, you know, that brought up a lot of stuff for you, physically, emotionally, mentally, so that you couldn't ignore it, right? Am I right there? Yeah. Yep. And I think that's what so often happens, is right. We can go along the path for so long, only so long, and then all of a sudden life kicks us back into the path where we need to do the work to be able to show up in the bigger, more expanded version of who we're supposed to be here, who we wanted to grow into being here, right? And then to hold space for your children. Because it takes a lot. There's a lot of capacity building to show up for these amazing multidimensional children. So I love that your journey was really alongside all that. It's not like you figured it out and then you're like, okay, now I can be a mom. Because that's really not how it works in this playground, right?
No. Yeah, and I'm so grateful that I did have the children, because that was my will to get my shit together.
Yeah.
I could have just taken the route of either medicating myself out of the insanity or just checking out and exploding my marriage and going and living some life that, was just chaotic, but I couldn't. I had these two light beings, looking up at me like, Mommy, what's wrong with you? And I need you. And I had to find me. And I had to also, learn how to navigate this for them, for me. I don't know that I would have gotten through what I did if I hadn't been a mother. It was the drive, it was the glue that kept me tethered to this planet when I just wanted to leave. So
yeah, that is so often the case. Like we make so many choices, getting us back into our own alignment, motivated to be the best mom we can, to show up for them more. So I would love to hear about your experience of starting to recognize that there's actually more than meets the eye with your daughter, right? Because it sounds like it came on pretty quick that you're like, oh wait, something else is going on here. This isn't quote unquote normal.
yeah,
What I thought it was going to be. There's more going on.
I mean, it starts from the moment I gave birth and I looked at her, and these eyes that looked back at me were like, I said, she looks like an alien. Like it was a gaze that was so, I couldn't understand it at the time. I hadn't opened yet. I didn't even know what a chakra was back then. I just knew that she didn't seem human. and, and there was this depth and beauty right away about her. But her sensitivity started right away too, with severe colic and sensory processing. And so there was also a lot of frustration, but she would have this way about her early on. We would, for example, we'd have gifts for Christmas or her birthday, and she would just look at the present and say, oh, can I open my unicorn? Can I open this? Like she knew what was inside of things. And we always, like, her grandparents were always like, what is wrong with that child? They up the book, and she just had this sight, so she had a lot of clairvoyance right away. She was one of those highly sensitive kids that early on, she'd be 2 or 3 and she'd be like, why he's sad? Why is she mad? She sensed things, and it was very hard for her to be around people. She immediately started saying it's too hard to be around everybody, what they're thinking. She was very sensitive. And so, I knew she had these gifts, but she was also a struggle to like integrate into this world because she just didn't integrate well. And it was very hard for her. And it was hard for me. My brain was a disaster at that time. And so she's sensitive, I'm sensitive. And, it was a challenge, but I also knew that she had something that she was tapping into that was really profound.
Yeah, a couple of things there that you're bringing forward is, this awareness that for a lot of us and a lot of our kids, that they've had these very high frequency experiences prior to this adventure as a human. And so being in the human body with so much density is it's not an easy entry. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes focus, it takes navigating to actually fit themselves, their psyche, their consciousness within these human bodies that, from a perception of past experiences they've had as a soul is very limiting.
Yeah.
Whereas those who've had, multiple lifetimes as humans, we, kind of click in and you're like, okay, I get this. There's an imprint there that we just click right back into if that's been our experience. But for a lot of these kids, this is maybe the first lifetime or the first 2 or 3 lifetimes as a human. And that takes navigating for sure. I definitely saw that in my youngest son. There was a lot, and especially through the emotional expression. It was like his body could not contain these big waves of emotions that would roll on through. And so that was a big piece of my early parenting, is that holding that container for those waves to flow freely. And they were big.
Yeah, my daughter definitely way more sensitive to being here. I mean, just today, she says this all the time, Mom, I don't know why I came here to be a human. This is so hard. She has so much memory of the other realms that, early on, she would say, it's so hard to just even have to use speech to communicate. Like, we shouldn't have to do that. So she's really fighting this dimensional reality. She's really resisting it. My son, who's also definitely starseed, he's way less in resistance. He's kind of found his niche. He just has his way of being here. He can't really go outside of it very well. He's kind of got a coping strategy, but he's in less resistance. But yeah, it's about helping their nervous systems, helping them to be in this body. Yeah. And, so fortunately I have some tools and skill set there, but it's still really hard for her. It's hard for me too, but yeah.
Yeah, we can appreciate that. I can absolutely see why she chose you, why you two chose each other.
Yeah.
To navigate this. And this particular time is kind of a crunch time for anyone who's extra sensitive. There's just a lot. There's a lot. So,
yeah, it feels like, I'll say that one of the things that I think is so hard for those of us as parents of these starseeds is to keep our own grid together, our own coherent pattern together for them. I mean, they're here to do so much work on the planet. And, if you understand polyvagal theory and nervous system regulation, you need a healthy, stable adult presence to stay regulated, to be able to alchemize the energies they're here to alchemize. And so here I am, I'm a highly sensitive starseed myself. And so it's hard for me to be in the body as well. I feel really fortunate that their dad is more of a stable earthling and he can be that pillar of grounding for them. But one of my personal struggles is staying in coherence for them to be able to do the work they came to do. And I think a lot of parents of starseeds are highly sensitive. And so it's kind of like a double whammy of who trying to get regulated. You want your child to be regulated so you can feel more regulated, but they need you to be that healthy, strong adult. And that's really where a lot of my work comes in. And my work is all about developing what I call a healthy inner adult concept, because it was really missing for me. And to be able to use that sense of responsibility to say, I need to do my work. I need to use my tools to be grounded right now, because my child needs me to be that for them. Otherwise, I don't know that I would be doing as much work as I am. I'm a little selfish that way. I'd probably let myself spin out a lot more, but I can't, because I know that they need that stable adult to be able to be there for them.
That makes so much sense to me, that our kids are mirroring this to us. For example, that mirroring is so active within our relationships with our kids when we identify this way, and that it would be really anchoring us in, because that's what I feel like this time is we are shifting the grids literally from the old grid to a new grid. And that does take a lot of presencing and anchoring in, and just that inner capacity building to hold that in this reality. And for somebody who is multidimensionally tuned in, that can very easily be like, I think I'm just going to meditate for my 5th time today. just be out there in the void, because it feels so at home, right? That's my experience. But it's like, okay, now I need to get up and I need to get, okay, that's where like somatic practices for me is like dance, right? And I know a lot of the practices that you teach and you offer are really about really anchoring that in. Being in this body. These are our vehicles. I've chosen this body, so let's really live it up. Let's fill it with as much light as it can hold. And then, I think what we're really being called to is to be all that we are within this vehicle to the highest extent possible, and then create. And that's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot. That's plenty. That's, if we're all doing that, and then in that being and creating, we're activating each other, awakening each other. I know your work is a big piece of supporting that journey.
Yeah. And the trick is to get into a place of play and creation. you need to have nervous system regulation. Our brainstem and we're hardwired to be in survival until we have that sense of safety. It's hard to move right into play. And so, so much of my work is how can I involve them in my nervous system regulation so we can get to a place of play rather than being so sensitized by the latest solar flares or whatever is going on, and so creative strategies for nervous system regulation that allow for more creation. And that's, part of my work and my discovery is, okay, I need to regulate, they need to regulate, we need to play. How can this play be regulating? How can I kind of come up with something creative that I know is regulating and then allows us to shift out into just pure creation? And that's the work.
Do you have an example of a time?
Yeah, well, this is one that you use a lot. So the 5 rhythms dancing that you and I are both very connected with. I love using music and different rhythms to match where my children are. So if they are obviously in like tantrum or out of control, I'm going to put on a rhythm that kind of matches that. And we might dance or bring out drums or even just talk with that kind of music in the background. So it matches the current somatic mood. But then I know that I'm going to be shifting that music into a different rhythm, one that might move from, chaotic to a little bit more funky or weird or playful, and then eventually calmer. So using the music to help meet them where they're at and act out where they're at. That's one of my favorite strategies and why I've loved 5 rhythms dancing for my own regulation, but also it's something that you can bring in for the children as well.
I love that. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I've actually been diving into the rhythm of chaos more in the last week, which is such a powerful transitionary rhythm to really let loose and dislodge anything that's getting in our way, right? Potentially, whether it be a dense energy, emotion, thought. It just it's like that, it's the element of water, which is so powerful to just like shake it all up.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, everything is so different.
Right. But we need to go through that rhythm and they kind of need us to go through it with them. Again, they're always looking for an adult to be there with them. And rather than, us like giving them some task or something to go play with, they're not going to move through that rhythm that they're needing. And so, like we just recently bought more rattles and drums just to be able to do chaos together, because I know, even though maybe it's hard to have all that noise and sound, I know if I can just go towards the chaos with them and find a way to shake it up with them, we're going to move through it rather than me trying to suppress it, like calm down, whatever, like they're feeling all scattered. I'm feeling scattered. The planetary frequencies are, having a burst and it's hard to calm down. Yeah. So we need to move that together.
Yes, that's such an important piece of, the younger our children are, the more they need us to guide the way. The more they're going to reconnect back to their core by us reconnecting with them and us going through that same journey with them. So true. And the more we do that, as they grow up, the more they're going to be like that pathway within each one of them is going to be grooved, right? Like, oh yeah, here comes another wave. I know how to move this.
Yeah.
I can do this, and they'll eventually do it for themselves. I've seen this with my youngest, especially but those first many years, it's like, okay, along with mom, along with whichever primary parent, who is the one that is most emotionally available to them, that you're the one.
Yeah.
And that you're right. It's like, okay, then I gotta be attuned to my own system as well, so that I can be doing that myself. This is where we're in such a time where it's like mandatory to have these kind of practices.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all in a global nervous system dysregulation. We all need to gain those awareness and tools. And I think it's crucial. And so my goal is my kids, at least, they might have a crazy mom, but they're going to watch me navigate and they're going to know, I speak to what I'm doing so they understand. So it's not something that is a surprise to them if they have wild emotions and this and that. They watched me move through the waves in many cases with lots of different tools. And so, you know, it's an important strategy instead of just staying bundled up and all, you know, put together and calm. And, you know, it leaves them without tools and strategy for when life actually happens to them when they do grow up.
Yeah, and I think really speaks to how adults have felt like they need to show up for kids, you know, whether it's parents or educators or other adults. It's like, I gotta have it together so I can demonstrate how it is to have it together. But what that happens is that kids don't see, because they feel the crazy inside them. They feel those discordant dissonance of their emotional body with their physical body. And if they don't see others dealing with that, it creates that divide of like, oh, maybe this isn't normal. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I need to shove this down. Like that has been the pattern for so long for kids on this planet, that this is a real time of us being able to shift that at the very least within our own nuclear families, right? In the home, and more out in the world as we expand and as more and more of us awaken to this awareness. Mm-hmm. So I know, you know, I would love to get talking about that expanded, okay, how do we bring this into our children's education? It's one thing for me to be, you know, to navigate this with my kids at home and create patterns and rhythms where we're doing this together all the time at home. But what about when they head out in the world? Not everybody, you know, is choosing to homeschool or unschool. It's time for us to really be looking and creating and forging these pathways out there. And I know you've explored this, so I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I've really thought a lot about education. The more that I've understood our own internal nervous system regulation and what causes us to get so dysregulated in the first place is that we lose touch with ourselves. We lose touch with our purpose. We've lost touch with our drive when we start living an inauthentic life. And that's really the setup, in my opinion, for chronic illness, chronic trauma that doesn't resolve, anxiety issues, mental health issues. So, you know, what's happened? Why are we so disconnected from our authenticity, our body? And what can we do with children? And so I really began a quest of looking for a way of educating them or having a system help with that helps children get in touch with what they love to do, how they feel in their body, what they're passionate about, what they want to learn, so that they're constantly checking in with themselves of what they want to do. Because I know emotions that spike and go out of control, it's an indicator that you're not paying attention to something. It's trying to get your attention of how you feel. So in education, if they are in that habit of what do I feel like doing, and getting in touch with that, I think that it's just going to help their nervous system be on board with what they're learning, rather than becoming in a divided mind state that a lot of us have as an adult. I call it a divided mind state, where they're living a career or doing something that is not what they actually want to be doing. And that divided mind state causes all sorts of internal problems and health problems over time. So how do we get our children in touch with what they want to learn? Well, you know, the teachers in traditional schooling aren't asking the kids what they would like to learn for the science curriculum. You know, that the teacher comes up with what this subject's going to be, and the kids learn about it. You know, maybe they get to ask some questions, but generally they don't get to decide. And they also don't really get to decide the time they allot with different subjects. And, you know, for me, like, here I am, an entrepreneur. There are things that I love to do, and there's some things that I need to delegate. They're not my favorite things. I'm learning that I get to choose what I spend my time on. And so I was just looking for a school system for my kids that had some of those pieces in place, and that sent me on a quest. And I think I found one, and we're going to be trying that out here soon.
Yeah, thank you for doing that work of recognizing what wasn't meeting your kids' needs, and then doing that search. Not every parent has, first of all, the awareness, and then feels resourced and able to do the search. Because how, you know, was it, I would love to hear about that search. Was it challenging? Did you find resources right away? What was that like?
Yeah, you know, it was challenging in that, you know, every school kind of has its pretty picture out front. you don't really know. And, there's different school systems. There's Waldorf, Montessori, there are all sorts of different school systems. And we obviously had done the homeschool thing because of the lockdown. And I knew that I couldn't do that long term. My career they need more attention than what I have to give for a school situation. So I would find schools that sounded amazing, but they were in a part of the country that I couldn't move to. And then eventually I kind of got to this place, well, maybe we just need to have them like outside, and we'll just move to Costa Rica and do some outdoor school. And because I knew at least in nature, they're going to get as close as they can to themselves. And I didn't really think this kind of school system that I was looking for existed in our country. And for me, the discovery I was thinking about as I was intending what I wanted to have to find in a school system is I wanted to bring my kids into a situation that I was finding that adults often need as well, which I teach a lot about the hero's journey in my adult work, and going on your own self-discovery to recover from chronic illness and trauma. And so all of my work is around the hero's journey. And eventually, as we were researching, we just happened upon a school and their front, a different type of school system, and it said the hero's journey. So it caught my eye right away. And we haven't actually done this particular program, but we've done a lot of research into it. And it sounds really interesting. It's called the Acton Academy. And there are a handful of them all over the country, but it sort of, checked a lot of the boxes that we were looking for. It's self-directed learning, it's project-based learning. They use the Socratic method. So teachers aren't just giving instruction, teachers are there to answer or to ask questions. And that's what I'm looking for. So we're going to try that out as a model. And the good news is there are a lot of them for people who are looking for alternative systems. And to me, the most exciting part is just that people are recognizing there needs to be another way to create self-starting learning, basically teaching kids how to be their own entrepreneur so that they have that confidence when they get out to the world of creating their reality and being resourceful in the things that they're not strong in. So they learn like, okay, I'm really good at that. I need to learn how to find resources to help me with this part of the project because maybe I'm not as strong in math or whatever. And you start learning resourcing. And that is so how life actually is. We're not like great at every subject. Typically, we usually need to resource. I know I need a resource in my work now. And so I really loved that model, and that's what we're going to try out.
Okay, awesome. I'm so, when we first spoke about this, I was so grateful to hear that you had found a model that seemed like a really good fit. So I'll be curious to hear how it goes along the way. But, I think there's going to be more and more models. There's going to be more and more opportunities like this. A lot of families like mine have sort of done piecemeal ways to navigate this because my kids too, when they were young, in their very early years, I was getting that very strong message that I want to choose my educational path. I want to choose when, what, and how I learn. And I can't do that in school. So Mom, I need to come home, and it took me, especially when I became an indie mama, like a single parent, I had to navigate how to manage that, how to make that work. But we had finally figured it out. And by the time my kids were in middle, like my oldest was in third grade, and my youngest was he came home at the beginning of second grade. So they've been mostly unschooled and at home through those first 12 years of learning. And I was so grateful it was one of the best decisions I made, and it wasn't easy, and we could have used more resourcing. Absolutely. We could have used more community because we live in this rural community where there isn't a lot of that. But we figured it out, and we're continuing to figure it out. And what I see my kids now is that they are super self-resourceful, and they hardly ever come to me for anything anymore. Now they're teenagers, they're older, and so they just figure it out. They come to me to be heard and listened to, and then they go off, that sort of just like, hey Mom, and then they'll just start talking. And I almost don't even need to bring in any definitely they're not coming to me for advice. They're not coming to me for, hey, I need help with this. Then we're like, here, I want to tell my youngest, he'll come to me and tell me about a story he's writing. And he's hit a bump in the road, right? Some writer's block. And I've started to learn how to just zip my lip and not resource him, not give him advice until he's like, hey, do you have any ideas about this? Because in his telling, in his unpacking and telling me about it, he gets to that place where he's like, oh, a new idea comes, and then he's off, he's off and he goes. Or he's like, hey, I need to get to the bookstore so I can look this up. So, okay, we'll go to the bookstore. I'm like the chauffeur. I'm the one who gets them what, I make sure they have enough food to be fueled. But other than that, at this point, I'm really the big listener for them. I'm their sounding board.
It's amazing. That's amazing. It sounds like you've helped them to create their own self-regulation through being self-resourced. And that's really what I see missing with a lot of my population, is that they weren't gifted the ability to grow a healthy inner adult concept of being, I am self-resourced, which does a tremendous amount for nervous system safety of, I can figure this out. I can make my own choices. And so you've gifted them that particular neural pathway. So that's going to set them up for so much success as they get out in the world. I mean, they're going to make mistakes and everything, but being able to handle it by knowing they're self-resourced that's amazing.
Yeah. And I think, these kids are coming in and they're either choosing parents who that's going to be naturally what they get. Or, with these more recent waves of kids, they're going to be coming in fully resourced from the get-go. And they're going to be reflecting that back to us, what it looks like to be out in the world in their truth. No apologies, no permission needed, confident, joyful, not waiting for anything to show up to tell them, okay, it's safe here. That's the future. That's the current new wave of kids coming in.
Oh, that is amazing. Where they're just free of the programming that we've been stuck in of, social survival and having no sense of your own internal authority and sovereignty. Yeah. That's really amazing.
Yeah, I know. I feel so much hope and faith in our future. Seeing this beginning. I think my youngest son is sort of one of the early ones on this wave, and he's always telling me I am my own teacher.
Amazing.
Just this week, he's like, oh, by the way, I'm planning my next my vision quest. I'll tell you where I need to go when I'm ready. It's like, so, but like the kids that have come before, like our kid, my oldest kid, your kids, ourselves, like all of that has created fertile ground for these newer waves of kids. And the what your daughter talked about of like, communication, the clairvoyance, those multisensory skills and abilities, those are going to be more and more clear in these newer waves of kids too. Telepathy. Any parent who has a star kid probably could start to develop telepathy anytime. Yeah. It's like, it's there, it just needs to be unlocked, right, for us. But our kids are often ready with it. Yeah.
Yeah, this weekend, my daughter actually said, she's like, I finally figured out how to turn off hearing what other people are thinking because it just gets exhausting. And I'm like, that's a great skill. She said, it took me a long time to figure it out.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Way to go.
Yeah, it's just like, great, Ellie. Oh, so sweet.
Amazing. Well, I'm feeling really juiced up and excited for our future and for the future of children. And I can't, like, our planet is I'm really inspired to bring forward this series because of all the children and this shift that we're in, and just like how much I feel like my purpose, a part of my purpose, is to support how we can continue to create spaces and communities and family life that really does nurture these extra multidimensional beings coming through our bodies into young bodies on the planet. Because they, together we are, we're the future. I think a lot of them, maybe some of us, are coming here from the future to assist in this amazing, tremendous transition time. So that's, I'm grateful for mamas like you who are in it and able to speak to it so eloquently and share your experience.
Yeah. I was asking my daughter before this podcast, I said, what advice or what do you have to say to other parents of kiddos who are from the stars? And she said, I really wish that more people could believe in the magic that we have, because when we feel like those don't believe us, then we question ourselves that it's even real. And she said, this magic, this capacity is real. And she says she feels sad that she can't share it with more people, because it's just, she said, I feel like I'm just speaking a different language, and it would be, I just want more people to know that what we have is real. And I just thought that was so beautiful. So that was
amazing. Ellie. Thank you, Ellie. I'm getting the sense that she's speaking it in her energy, right? In her eyes. And as she grows and engages with the world, it's just going to be in her field. People just being in her field are going to feel that invite to wake up to their own magic. Whether they take her up on it or not, right? That's up to them. But what a beautiful gift she's bringing.
Yep. Just helping her choose to be here on the planet. That's my challenge.
Stick around.
It's hard, Mom. A hard one.
And maybe it's also just continuing to ask and listen of like the reminder of why she chose to come, because it wasn't a push for any of these kids. It was definitely like a choosing, whether they fully remember that or not, or fully even knew what they were jumping into, right? I think a lot of times we're like, yeah, let's do it, dive bomb into the playground, and then we're like, holy moly, what did I just say yes to? But that knowing within her of like, right, I did choose this. And also like what's coming up is like, potentially a knowing of that it was going to be a temporal time of transition. And ideally her life is going to be so long that she's going to have like the world is going to really change. For her and for all of those kids.
That's someone did a gene key reading on her, and they said the same thing, to let her know that she's kind of came in during the rocky time, and to just, it's going to be what she came here for a little later. This time she just kind of needs to, I need to take the pressure off her as well to like fit into the standards, because she has challenges with that.
100%. Yeah, and that's a big piece of mothering these kiddos, I think, is holding that bigger vision of what we know is true for them. Whether they fully remember all of it or not, or they're in the moments when they are in challenge, is to hold that awareness. And I know that's some of the feedback I get on my readings of children is that, a lot of times it's more information than it's just to hold lightly in the bigger field as your kids grows into becoming themselves, right? Grows into their mission, grows into their purpose. And we just get to hold it loosely, but it can be so helpful to know some things in order to not feel that old conditioning to be like, what's wrong with my kid? They're not fitting in school. They're not being able to have a conversation without coming across as whatever negative judgment that these kids sometimes receive upon themselves, because partially they're here to really challenge anybody who is not living their authentic lives, their authentic truth. And that's going to be pokey for a lot of adults.
Yeah, I would say that's one of my biggest lessons that I've learned as a parent was when I realized that I was putting pressure on my daughter to have social survival strategies that I had to have as a child growing up. She doesn't need those strategies. She's got a good home. She's got us to be aware. I needed to have strategies for survival that she doesn't need. And so I learned like, oh my gosh, I'm putting this on her that she needs to be, appropriate in social settings or be able to handle school in certain ways. I'm like, no, she doesn't. She's got us here. We understand her, and she has a safe home to be in. She doesn't need to fit in the way that we are programmed that kids should fit in.
Yeah. Right. A lot of these kids today are not choosing the dysfunctional families that a lot of adults jumped into, partially because they needed that extra safety and like that really warm, connected nest to prepare them to launch into their mission and purpose without having to do all that. Like, think of how much of your adult life have you needed to backtrack and decondition.
Yeah.
Right? These kids, they intended not to have to do that work.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Kathleen, for jumping in with us. And I'm going to make sure that I have links below about how people can reach you and learn more about your work in the world. Is there anything you want to, that's still alive in you to share or to bring forward here as we close up?
I think as I already reiterated, my work is about having adults become that coherent energy pattern, that grid holder in the home. And the most important thing you can do instead of, worrying about your kids and fitting in is to just keep your own energy field flowing, keep your own nervous system in check, because you are helping to create that safety for them to naturally do what they can do as long as they have a system of safety around them. That's the best thing you can do. Their intelligence, their instructions are going to awaken their purpose, and they'll do just fine. But they need that healthy container around them. And so, focusing on as parents, your own alignment, your own coherence, it's the best way I think we can, be a safe place for our kids to blossom into their multidimensional selves.
Yes, 100%. So, but that brings up this question for parents who that's maybe a newer concept for of what it is to be in alignment or in coherence. How, I know before I started doing this work myself that I could be completely out of alignment and not even realize it for a long time before I started having, instilling daily, sometimes hourly practices. So do you have one that you could just share, or just how to begin to even navigate that?
Yeah. Well, I really love the HeartMath Institute and their practices for coherence because it's the easiest ones to learn. And it's simply just throughout the day, breathing in and out of your heart while really focusing on the environment with your eyes. And, I teach people, just to even say a mantra, I'm here, I'm right here. And I just focus on my heart, and I'm also focused on the room with my eyes. So presence and heart-centered breathing. That right there is going to give you so much information about what's actually going on with you. You'll have to feel your feelings. You'll have to realize like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in here. You'll feel everything. But that right there is the best way to get our energy here, now, grounded through the body, heart-centered presence, focused on the current environment. So a lot of times we're looking, but we're thinking in our head. We're not actually like seeing anything around us.
Yeah.
And so that would be the basic tool, heart breath, and then what are you noticing in your environment?
That's such a good one. I feel like we could all be doing that. I mean, activating that a few times a day, and it would be so supportive. And it also, what it brings up for me is that then I'm going to be noticing some things that right? You can't do that without noticing where you're not in alignment, right? When you're feeling stuff that doesn't feel good. And I just want to give everyone permission that that's what we're here for. Like, we're here to be human, to feel the full spectrum of all the emotional ranges and not get caught up in any one of them, right? Like, just feel them and let them flow.
Yeah.
Because that's how we clarify our field. That's how we clarify our relationships. We just let them flow. And when there is like when there are pockets of trauma, which is really where most of us get hung up with the big triggers, right? That's where your work can be so beneficial. So I would suggest, for those pockets, definitely when you notice those pockets getting a little tender, go get some supportive, go find a really powerful container, a resource like Cathleen to go be within to hold that space for your inner work. Because it's like, that's not us, right? Yeah. None of that is us. None of that is you. And it's just, how do you disengage? How do you discharge it, right? That is the work.
Yep, that's right. Holding space for all of our human experience with a heart-centered presence. Yep.
Yeah, and that's really what our kids need most from us. They don't need us to keep up with the dishes or the laundry. I mean, obviously those are nice, but our presence is the most powerful gift we can give them.
Yep.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
I loved our chat.
I love it too. I've loved having you as a sounding board the last several years of knowing you with my own parenting challenges. You've really been a container for me as well in my expansion and navigating all of that while also being a mama and having my life rearranged in many ways. So thank you for being there for me too.
You're so welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in.